Hello everybody. If you want to read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you. Short story 486, The Quiet County, Part 2. Upper Beginner. The quiet in Willow Creek grew. The children at school became like little robots, repeating slogans and doing exactly as they were told. Playtime was less boisterous. Instead of inventing games, they often just sat or played structured activities led by teachers who watched them closely. At home, parents felt a growing unease. They whispered to each other in the village shop or in hushed tones over garden fences. "Have you noticed how quiet our Sarah is? My Daniel just nods all the time now." The word brainwashing was never spoken aloud, but it hung in the air like a heavy mist. Emily, Poppy's mum, decided she couldn't ignore it anymore. She called her friend Sarah, whose son Leo was in Miss Jenkins' class. "Sarah," Emily said, her voice low, "I think something is wrong at school. Poppy is not herself." Sarah sighed. "I know, Emily. Leo used to ask 100 questions a day. Now he just says, 'It's for county unity, Mum.'" They decided to talk to other parents. Slowly a small group began to form. They met in secret in each other's homes after the children were asleep. There was John, the farmer, Emily, Sarah, and a few others. They shared their worries, their observations, and their fears. "We need to do something," John said one evening, his brow furrowed. "But what? The county education board seems to control everything." "We could complain," suggested another parent. "Write letters." "We've tried that," Emily said sadly. "They send back polite but firm replies, saying the new curriculum is for the enrichment and betterment of our children." Suddenly, Sarah had an idea. "What if we don't fight them directly? What if we try to wake up our children quietly?" The others looked at her, curious. "We can't tell them what to think, not yet," Sarah continued, "but we can remind them of what they used to love. We can remind them to be curious, to ask questions, to think for themselves, even just a little bit." It was a risky plan. They had to be careful. The county education board had eyes and ears everywhere, even in the smallest villages. The next day, Emily started. When Poppy drew only county flags, Emily would say, "That's a lovely flag, sweetie. Do you remember that time you drew the sparkly unicorn? That was so beautiful too." She didn't say it was better, just reminded Poppy of other things she had enjoyed. John started telling Tom stories from his own childhood, stories where he made mistakes, learned lessons, and sometimes even challenged his own parents. "It's good to think for yourself, son," he'd say casually. "Sometimes the best ideas come from different ways of seeing things." The teachers, especially Mrs. Davis and Miss Jenkins, noticed the subtle changes too. They saw parents trying to rekindle the spark in their children's eyes. It gave them a tiny flicker of hope. During their own secret meetings, Mrs. Davies shared how she had started slipping in old stories during reading time, stories about brave individuals who dared to be different. One afternoon in Miss Jenkins's class, Leo was drawing. He had been taught to draw only pictures that showed county unity, rows of identical houses, smiling identical people. But today, after his mum had shown him an old photo of him playing in the mud, Leo drew a small, messy puddle at the bottom of his perfect picture. Miss Jenkins saw it. Her heart gave a little jump. It was a tiny rebellion. Instead of correcting him as the guidelines demanded, she walked over and quietly said, "That puddle looks very interesting, Leo. What do you think would happen if someone stepped in it?" Leo looked up, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. "It would splash, miss, and make their shoes muddy." It was a small conversation, but it was a beginning, a whisper of an old thought, a forgotten question. Vocabulary notes. Boisterous, adjective, meaning, of a person, event, or behavior. Noisy, energetic, and cheerful, sometimes a little wild or lacking restraint. Example, playtime was less boisterous. Similar words: lively, energetic, rowdy, exuberant, spirited. Example sentence outside the story. The boisterous crowd cheered loudly for their team. Hushed, adjective, meaning done in a very quiet voice, kept secret or suppressed. Example, they whispered to each other in the village shop or in hushed tones over garden fences. Similar words: quiet, subdued, muted, whispered, hushed up for secrets. Example sentence outside the story. The audience spoke in hushed tones during the serious part of the play. Unease, noun, meaning a feeling of anxiety or discomfort, a lack of comfort or relaxation. Example, at home parents felt a growing unease. Similar words: discomfort, anxiety, apprehension, worry, disquiet. Example sentence outside the story. There was an unease in the air before the big storm. Hanging in the air, idiom, meaning of a feeling, idea, or question. Perceptible but not clearly expressed or decided, present but unspoken. Example, the word brainwashing was never spoken aloud, but it hung in the air like a heavy mist. Similar words: tangible in a metaphorical sense, palpable, implicit, unaddressed, unresolved. Example sentence outside the story. A sense of tension hung in the air after their argument. Furlong, verb past participle of furrow, meaning of a person's brow or face, acquire lines or wrinkles, typically as a result of worry, anger, or concentration. The story uses furrowed brow, which is common. Example, but what? The county education board seems to control everything, John said one evening, his brow furrowed. Similar words: wrinkled, creased, puckered, contacted. Example sentence outside the story. Her brow furrowed in concentration as she tried to solve the puzzle. Enrichment, noun, meaning the act of improving or enhancing the quality or value of something. Example, they send back polite but firm replies, saying the new curriculum is for the enrichment and betterment of our children. Similar words: enhancement, improvement, development, betterment, cultivation. Example sentence outside the story. Reading books is a great way for children's intellectual enrichment. Betterment, noun, meaning the act or process of making something better, improvement. Example, they send back polite but firm replies, saying the new curriculum is for the enrichment and betterment of our children. Similar words: improvement, advancement, progress, development, amelioration, more formal. Example sentence outside the story. He dedicated his life to the betterment of society. Rekindle, verb, meaning to revive or bring back to life a feeling, passion, or interest. Example, they saw parents trying to rekindle the spark in their children's eyes. Similar words: revive, reignite, restore, resuscitate, regenerate. Example sentence outside the story. Visiting her old school helped to rekindle her love for history. Slipping in, phrasal verb, meaning introducing something quietly, secretly, or without drawing attention to it. Example, during their own secret meetings, Mrs. Davis shared how she had started slipping in old stories during reading time. Similar words: inserting, integrating, introducing discreetly, weaving in, sneaking in. Example sentence outside the story. He tried slipping in a few jokes to lighten the mood of the serious meeting. Dared, verb, past tense of dare, meaning had the courage or boldness to do something. Example, Stories about brave individuals who dared to be different. Similar words: ventured, risked, had the guts, had the nerve, braved. Example sentence outside the story: she dared to speak up against the unfair rules. Rebellion, noun, meaning an act of open, active and usually violent resistance to an established government or ruler, or more generally, an act of defiance against authority. Example: it was a tiny rebellion. Here it's used in the general sense of defiance against the rules. Similar words: defiance, insubordination, resistance, mutiny, protest. Example sentence outside the story: his constant questioning was an act of silent rebellion against the strict system. Flicker, noun, a momentary or faint manifestation of a feeling or quality. Example: Leo looked up, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. Similar words: glimmer, hint, trace, spark, transient appearance. Example sentence outside the story: there was a flicker of hope in her voice. Story written by Gemini AI. Image created by Desgo.com AI. To read all the stories in full, please go to www.steveuk.blog. Thank you.